our regular meeting of the school board a little bit late at 7:30. So I'm going to do our call to order, and I will again ask us to go around. Ms. Hollerback, can you start us off with our roll call?
Irene Hollerback, Aquia District.
Tricia Healy, Rock Hill.
Holly Hazard, Hartwood.
Elizabeth Warner Griffiths, Widewater.
Sarah Chase, Falmouth.
Susan Randall, George Washington.
Can anyone hear Ms. Young? Let's try it again. Ms. Young, can you try?
Pam Young, Garrisonville District is here.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
There's been a motion to approve the agenda and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is our COVID-19 update. The majority, well, the entire part of our work session was regarding this topic. I will ask Dr. Kisner not to go over everything there, but to direct people where they could find this information, maybe just a couple highlights of where the staff is, not on the specifics, just the options, and then I do have just a few things after you can.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Hazard. So if it's not on there now, it will definitely be on by 9 o'clock tomorrow morning on our COVID section of our website. If you know how to navigate the school board agenda, it is on board docs, but we'll have it in a more prominent place tomorrow, and people could see the draft presentations. Thank you.
I guess just saying that there are two options being looked at right now regarding elementary, middle, and high school. Additionally, one of the things that the board talked immensely about afterwards, and I think heard from over the weekend, was the desire for as much in-face instruction. Both of these two plans are meant to accomplish that. They're, as we discussed last week, transportation is a huge part of this discussion of transporting our kids. In the last work session, I was the only member that didn't have a chance just to ask a few things. Like I said, these will be very brief. All of mine sort of revolve around communication, because many of my board members have hit some of the deep ones. And I guess my main things about communication is going to be, first, our kindergarten and our Head Start. I have a heart for how we're reaching those parents during this really unique time, and how they are able to register their students, possibly not being able to be in the schools with required documents and all of that. So I'm sure somebody's in charge of those things, not just kindergarten, but that's a whole grade level, but other students who may be moving to the area, what accommodations we're doing over the summer to meet those needs.
Right. So, Carrie, if you could talk specifically about kindergarten, then I will have Roxanne talk about the other part. Carrie, are you still on here?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I was trying to get off of mute. So we will take advantage of whatever flexibility we can in terms of working with our kindergartners to register. We've worked closely with Marilee in our technology department. We still have certain requirements that Colette, reminds us of, but I do think we have as much flexibility as we can take advantage of to get our students in. We will take advantage of that. And that would be for kindergarten and for our early childhood. And as you know, Kathy Massey is, already reaching out to her families and working with them to make sure that those students will be welcomed in the fall.
Roxanne, do you feel like you could speak about students that are enrolling in our schools during the summer months, how we're handling that?
Yes, Dr. Kistner. So the students that are enrolling in kindergarten and the ones that are enrolling for any of the grades that are new to our county, we are, when it comes to ESL, we are going to be opening the Welcome Center for providing testing, and it's going to be one-on-one. We're waiting for the final approval from Colette for the process that has to do with that. The ESL teachers are reaching out to anybody that enrolls to start making connections with those students, and we are providing those, as you know, the language link lines in which families can call to ask any questions and be walked through any issues that they have. Is that what you were referring to, Dr. Kisner?
Well, what about any child, a seventh grade child that is not an EL child, or maybe somebody, one of the chiefs could, like that parent that emailed me yesterday and I sent it to you and Pam.
Yes.
Maybe you could talk about that follow-up.
Yes, so we have been getting emails that either Dr. Kisner forwards to us or they come from the schools and the chiefs can jump in at any time. And where parents have questions in regards to anything that has to do with coming to the county, we are doing a team approach in which we talk to each other and find out the areas that the parents are needing help with. And we either call them back, email them, whatever works for them. And that's why I said including the language links, because we have one in English too. When parents are needing any type of help, even when they first come to the county, they can call that phone line, leave a message, and within 24 to 48 hours, we contact the correct people to provide answers for the parents.
Okay, I appreciate that. And I guess I would say, because I do know people are actually listening because of this, if you do see new families come in, help them connect into our schools, because also a part of this plan that works the best is if we know as many of the children that are coming, because we're going to be making decisions. So the second piece of my comment about communication is having really a communication plan with dates of when we're going to be reaching out to our staff, but also to our parents, especially when we were talking about transportation, how many people will be using those buses. And I think making that very public on and how we do that, just that we need to begin to start, I know, doing that communications plan, and I know that's of importance, but so much of what we need to be doing now, once we move into an execution part of this plan and trying to make sure we can transport everybody and all of those things, is really who's going to be using the bus, who needs services, and really reaching out to our families. So I think that's got to be a really thought out plan. And because we sit between newspapers and our communication, we have challenges of how we get out information. So I just, Dr., because I'm not saying tonight, but I think that we really need to, as a board, but really our communications of how are we going to execute that communications plan. So that would just really be my comments. Most of the other ones we were met. I would also ask board members to look, okay, very briefly, does July 14th, can the board members be available that evening, either in person or even if you are out of town or traveling, to be able to be available on July 14th?
I will be out of town, but I can try to come in virtually.
So I would say we can tonight go ahead and at least put that on our calendar. So I just wanted board members, if you're like me, you got to get it on the calendar before, or like me, I forget. So that was going to be my next question. What time would is preferable? 6?
6.
Ms. Young?
I don't know if you could hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. 6 is fine. You could do it even earlier.
I can't do earlier, so 6 would probably be the earliest for me.
Okay.
All right, let's go with 6 o'clock. Everybody. All right. Dr. Kisner, any last words?
I'll be there.
Not that I was giving you the stink eye. All right, next we have our staff reports. We have two this evening. We'll be starting with our restorative justice update. I'm sorry, mine has gone down, so I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kisner and
Yeah.
whomever you would like to present.
So you're navigating for Roxanne? Okay, Roxanne, this is yours.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kistner. Good evening. Dr. Kistner, Madam Chair Hazzard, board members, and colleagues. So people often ask why restorative practices. The answer is because of exclusionary discipline. To give you a brief example, the two most forms of exclusionary discipline practices at schools, and Missy, you can move to the next slide. The two most common forms are suspension and expulsion. That's exclusionary discipline. This keeps our children out of the classroom. In our schools, we have many instances of suspensions for defiance, disrespect, and disruption. And unfortunately, these reasons for suspensions have been shown to exhibit very high racial disparities in their interpretation and use. This movement of exclusionary discipline started in the 80s with zero tolerance, which for some of the students, it means graduating high school with a police record. For others, discipline policies push them out of school long before graduation. And rarely do these harsh practices change students' behavior. They rather actually worsen students' attitude towards school by removing them from class and isolating them from their peers. Slide 2, please. This is where restorative practices come in. With the right implementation and the right training and support from all stakeholders, restorative justice and practices can prove much more effective in building a stronger school community. There are 3 pillars to restorative justice, in which harm is acknowledged and harm is acknowledged and the perpetrator assumes responsibility. The second one is repairing harm done to the victim. And the third one is communities, engaging all stakeholders in community rebuilding. Using approaches such as dialogue, peace circles, conferencing, and peer-led meditation, restorative practices get to the root cause of student behavior, which often relates to adult behavior. A restorative culture seeks to address the missing piece of teaching social and emotional and conflict resolution skills by turning behaviors into learning opportunities. Accepting responsibility for behaviors is a big part of it, and making right what has been wrong is the goal of the learning opportunity. Using these models in the school community still allow each educator to have his or her own expectation and forms of accountability. When a student does not respond to the classroom accountability system, a student is referred to a support staff member for a more intensive intervention aimed at helping the student make better behavioral choices. So the ultimate goal in addressing behaviors is to ensure a positive and stable educational environment for all of our students, while encouraging growth towards self-discipline, accepting responsibility, and appreciating the rights of others. When fully implemented and correctly implemented with a race conscious lens, restorative practices improve school climate, increase academic achievement, and reduce racial disparities in school discipline. Slide 3, please, Missy. Okay, implementation began with 5 schools, the 5 schools on your left, who volunteered to take part in the initiative, and the schools began meeting with the Office on Youth, who is our provider, in October of 2019. Our schools are all in different stages of implementation. The Office on Youth, with the school's leadership, established a restorative justice team at each school, and this restorative justice team was comprised of different school-based stakeholders. This is what they were going to become the trainer of trainers, sorry. There was also 1 or 2 school-wide professional development done for all of the staff at those schools. The RJ teams were fully trained at 4 out of our 5 schools, and the rollout of restorative practices began in the restorative justice team classrooms in December or January of 2020. Obviously, with the COVID outbreak and the closing of our schools, we had to cut it short. We are waiting on VDOE to ratify the discipline data from this past school year so we can use it as part of our evaluation components. Now for 2021, we are expanding the restorative justice development, professional development to the rest of middle schools, while at the same time providing second-year support and further development for the original 5 schools. Slide 4, please. So the last thing is this, is the principals at the high schools have expressed interest in attending training or professional development in restorative justice for the development of a framework and implementation plan, which will give them a leg up, I guess, in implementing restorative justice or restorative practice training on the 21-22 school year. Sorry, that was a mouthful. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes,
Sure.
ma'am.
Ms. Young, you start us off, and then I'm going to go around, okay?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Kisner, and Roxanne, for taking on this challenge that was given to you back in the 2020, implementing this restorative justice. I wanted to know when the trainer was going to be completed. Like, I know this is the first round and COVID came, but did we complete that? And if not, when will that be? And could we do it online, or is it not productive doing it online? That is my first question. And then the second one is, I didn't see all the high schools. When will they, like Brook and Mountain View and Colonial, those are some schools that we need to get it in as soon as possible. So I'm trying to find out what that timeline looks like. Thank you.
Yes, so the training of trainer has taken place for out of the 5 schools. It has been completed at 4 out of our 5 schools. And the teachers that were part of those training of trainers were first implementing it in their classrooms, and getting experience with it before they go ahead and start teaching it to others. If that makes sense, Ms. Young.
Yes, it does. So we did not get through to all the schools as yet.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5.
Yes, ma'am.
We have 17 schools.
Yeah, no, but there was 5 pilot schools that we were allowed to. Yes, so this year what we're doing is the rest of the middle schools that had not participated are all going to go through the same training that these first 5 schools were or did. And then this year, 2021 also, we're going to take school leadership to begin the training for them and doing an implementation plan, because they're going to be, we're going to offer for them to visit schools, when appropriate, and we're going to have them go through that training that is in that last slide with Live in the Village. It is a training that provides enough of a background and enough information for them and assistance for the principals at all the rest of the schools that have not been through it to design a framework and an implementation plan for their schools for the coming year.
So I just wanted to make sure that the schools and the principals do not think that this is a choice.
It is not. Everybody's doing, and then high school. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Let me address that real quickly. So the Office of Children and Youth, they're the ones doing the training. So we actually had more schools interested than the capacity for trainers. So the first round was really strictly volunteers. They were not, I think, I forget the exact number, but it was over 10. I think it was actually 14 schools asked. We did a training. Another school system came and did an orientation, and I do want to thank the Sheriff's Department. They participated, and but anyway, we were only able to do 6 schools, and so just to give you an understanding that we're dependent on an outside group, a Stafford group, but to do the training.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Hollerbeck?
Just a quick question. How does this program work when there's a criminal element involved, and then the courts are involved in this too? How does that dynamic work?
So I'll just answer from my experience in another community. We're not there what you're describing at Stafford. In Harrisonburg, that community was a community where the courts, the police department, actually the churches and the schools, and JMU and others all went through training. There was a restorative coalition. So if a child, adult was charged with something, again, we obviously didn't make the determination. A alternative to whatever the sentence might be, or maybe part of the sentence, could be to go to a restorative approach, but we don't have that in Stafford.
So, and just a quick follow-up question. Back in probably 3 or 4 years ago, I sat on a committee that was put together by the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, Youth at Risk. Mike Justice was also a part of that. Some of the DARE officers, the court liaison was part of it, and they were working on a restorative justice program. So I'm wondering if there's a way for us all to work together.
Yeah, I would love to have a conversation with you, and maybe you could help us open those doorways. I did see a very positive, I think a couple of the board members came to that one-day orientation, but the sheriff's department did send 3 or 4 of its officers there. So yeah, that's the way to do it. It has to be a community effort. Yeah.
I'll look into it to see if it's still
yeah,
operational. I know we have a big banner in our hallway.
Yes.
In the central office. I would certainly hope to, I'd like to think that it's still operational. So
right.
maybe I'll place a call tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Can I piggyback on what Ms. Hollowback just said? Basically, Sheriff Decatur and we were already talking about that, to resume that, and I know Ms. Hollowback wants to be part of that, so we just need to all be on the same page and move forward with that like that. Thanks.
Ms. Healy?
I heard that we're waiting for data to come in from somewhere, but how are we going to evaluate this in our school system?
Roxanne, did you hear the question about evaluation?
Yes, I did. And actually, Ms. Healy, we have, and I will share the document with you all. We have, with Rebecca Towery, worked up potential evaluation components, which includes everything from literature, which we have done already, the literature review of existing research and relevant topics. Well, we've looked at the literature. We haven't put it together yet. Everything else has taken precedence. The methodology, we're going to look at the methodology. We're going to look at overview of the initial implementation, the financial breakdown. We're going to do qualitative and quantitative data by doing surveys and interviews with principals, APs, and to look at the discipline data, disaggregated discipline data of last year, this year, and really next year, because the implementation, while it's beginning right now, the true effects are not going to be seen until at least one full implementation year. It takes time, but I hope that answers part of your question, and I am more than happy to send you this information.
Thank you.
Dr. Warner?
So what's the anticipated time that it's going to take to get the high schools and the rest of the elementary schools involved? And also my second part of this question is, it appears that there needs to be community partnerships, and I assume we're developing those as a means of trying to make this a really effective process.
Yes, this is absolutely a part of it. The rest of the schools, the elementary schools, already practice a form of restorative practices. And so they're well underway. Some of the basics of restorative justice, which includes the circles, the elementary schools already do them in the morning, and the building of the community is already more inherently a part of the elementary schools. But we're still going to offer it to them, and that's why we have, because the capacity is not there for our local company, the Office on Youth partner, that is doing the training to do more than a certain amount of time to do it with fidelity. That's why we are partnering with the person and the company from Richmond to come and start doing it with the high schools this year, while in a different capacity. This is going to be training the principals and the leadership and the core before it gets implemented, so that it's ingrained into what they believe they're buying, so that they understand it inside and out before they implement it. Because in the high schools, it needs to be done. I mean, it needs to be done with fidelity everywhere, but in the high schools, it's crucial that it's followed. So having a good implementation plan and a framework to work off is going to give them, you know, that which is necessary.
Dr. Chase?
Yeah, hi. So a couple things. One, I hope you will share that evaluation plan with all the board members, not just Ms. Healy. And then I wanted to say I was fortunate enough to get to go to the one of the rollout sessions last year, and I remember hearing elementary school staff talking about how the responsive classroom was very much this restorative practices, and so they didn't feel like there was a huge amount that was new. I'm pleased to see that you're sort of scaffolding this, so you've got the elementary schools sort of have some of this in place, and then you're going to do the middle schools, and then you can build on that to the high schools, so that students will have this sort of continuous from elementary to high school experience. I'm curious about Stafford High School, since they've lost so much of their leadership this year. They've lost their principal, they've lost a couple of APs, or just one AP, two APs. So how is restorative practices?
Stafford High School will need a reset. I like to just leave it at that, okay?
Yes.
Could you say that into the mic, just so
Oh,
people could hear
Stafford
you?
High School, we're gonna start from the beginning.
Yes.
Ms. Randall?
Okay, so I was actually also interested in the data, so I'm definitely interested in to see what the evaluation is. But when you train the trainers in the building, are we? You said four of the 5 schools implemented. What was the school that did not?
Stafford High School.
Oh, okay. And then, okay, so reset. Gotcha. And then when are we expected to be done with all of the schools?
With all of the schools by 2022, full implementation.
Full implementation. Okay. And then, so every year will we get data then to evaluate?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
This is Pam. I have a follow-up question. I was waiting to see if anybody asked the same question, but Ms. Randall and I had a conversation, and she's in charge of the governance for right now. But I wanted to see if we could move forward. Also, Ms. Hollerbeck, this is something for you also, to see if the SROs that are going to be servicing our schools in the upcoming year to go through culturally sensitive classes. And in addition, I wanted the board, our board, to go through sensitivity class, because I think it's important for us to understand what this means, and I think we'll get a better appreciation for the work that the school system is doing.
Actually, not that I'm addressing that, I appreciate that comment, but you did give if I could just ask Roxanne for a minute to talk about the work that's starting next week in the area of equity that does tie into this, and somebody that I know some of you know has a relationship already with Stafford schools. Do you want to talk a little bit about your focus groups?
Yes, sir. So we're starting next week, and we're going to be holding bi-monthly equity roundtables. We are originally going to be bringing this to a leadership in the schools and central office, and Dr. Kistner has asked if we bring it to you if you all were interested. We're having, many of you know her already, Charlene Green, the former Charlottesville City Office of Human Rights Manager. She was also the coordinator of equity and diversity for Albemarle County. But so with these equity roundtables, what we want to do is give educators the opportunity, and our stakeholders the opportunity to be lifelong learners. They are meant to encourage conversation, to build upon our knowledge and create an understanding of other people's experiences to better inform our jobs and our interactions with our colleagues and our students. So really, they will address the issues that are affecting our communities and create safe spaces for all so that we can produce the learning experiences that our students deserve. The first roundtable is going to be the next week, and it's going to begin by looking at who we are and what we bring to the table, because that affects everything that we say and do. The second part is the listening, learning, and understanding of others and where others are coming from. And the third part of it is knowing all that, how does it apply to the way that we teach, the way that we lead, and how we interact with colleagues.
Is this a round table or a Zoom table?
It's a Zoom table.
It's Zoom table.
A Zoom table, but Charlene Green is going to be especially at the first couple until we start creating the ambience that is needed for those safe spaces. She is going to be leading these equity talks, and these are going to be ongoing.
How long are these roundtables?
An hour and a half.
Oh, okay.
And we were thinking, this is something that I was going to talk to Holly and Irene about, is if the board had an interest, and it goes with what Ms. Young was just saying, to see if the board was interested to have its own session with her at a future date. So that's, and we could, work around everybody's schedule. So anyway, we were discussing that.
And Dr. Kisner, before we go, Ms. Young, you asked about the SRO training. One of the things that we are proposing is that SROs do go through restorative justice training and, like you said, cultural sensitivity, which I know that they're offered some within their departments, but we would love to have them, to welcome them here to do it with us.
Okay, we will put that on the agenda.
If I could just make a final comment with regard to just restorative practices, and as we tackle the huge coming back with COVID and stuff, we are going to have a lot of kids who have anxiety, anger, fear, and every other emotion in between. And I don't put that on children. I've felt them myself, to be perfectly candid. So I'm curious if there is some thought of how we, and I think you've touched on it, Dr. Kisner, but this might be a time of how we can, I know we keep saying professional development, but how do we help our frontline teachers and staff react to that? And I know we have hired counselors and stuff, but many times the person who's going to be the one who's going to see it first, just like every other school day, is our teachers. And you may not have an answer to that, but something I want us to think about.
I love the question, and if Dr. Hummer's on the call, I know this is, George, are you on?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Could you talk about the curriculum and some of the work and keep it relatively brief, and we could put the agenda for further elaboration another day?
Yes, I'll keep it brief. So thank you, Mrs. Hazard. We have thought about that. We are going to be putting into place professional development for all of our staff, the front lines. We are looking into a program, as Dr. Kisner has mentioned, in regards to checking a pulse of our students and where they are at currently with their social emotional well-being, so we can address and prioritize those students to support them, and then we will follow up with students and staff and our staff as well in regards to our counselors and social workers to provide them with training as well. So, and if you want me to elaborate more on that, I can do that at further time. So that's pretty much in a nutshell.
No, I appreciate that, because I, in speaking with a variety of staff members from just a variety of things, we all want to be sensitive to that, because we're all in a brand new, place we've nowhere gone before, and the way we can be most successful is making sure that we're all looking out for each other's mental health, but also, even if we see it, what do we do?
Absolutely. If I can make one more comment on that, and I'll keep it very brief, is it can't just fall on one person either. It can't just be a counselor or a social worker or a psych or one teacher. It's all of us. It's going to be all of us as educational leaders, administrators, front office staff, cafeteria workers. It's going to be all of us. So we're going to make sure we embed that into our training. So thank you.
And Mr. Hummer, if you don't mind sharing that, if there's something to share, feel free to share that with us.
Absolutely, Mrs.
Yeah,
Young.
because Dr. Kisner sends us stuff 2:00 in the morning. You're allowed to send up some stuff. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Young.
All right. Any further questions about this topic? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to our always riveting financial reports. And thank you, Mr. Fulmer. So I believe we're going to be listening to you.
Thank you, Ms. Hazard. So I provided an update a couple weeks ago to the board, and then provided a brief update yesterday evening to the FAB as well. Just as we get closer to the end of the year, and then after the end of the year, we'll continue to provide updates. So some good news on the state revenue side. After I last provided the update a couple weeks ago, the state did come out and say that they were projecting to be able to meet the lottery revenue. So if you recall, we were actually anticipating being $1.3 million short in our lottery funding, and the state now is anticipating that they will be able to meet those projections, and we will get that full payment at the end of the year. Sales tax, we are still monitoring. We did get our April FY20 payment, which came in June. There's a 2-month lag there. A little bit of context is that was a 7.5% below FY19. A little bit more context, our payments prior to COVID hitting, we were actually averaging about 10% above the prior year. So you'll see that's a pretty substantial drop, but we actually are expecting that to probably level off a little bit more for May and June, specifically June. So currently projecting a shortfall of 400,000, but favorable sales in June could result in less shortfall there. Our other revenues, combining our federal and other miscellaneous local revenues, are projecting revenue shortfall of 700,000, and that's been pretty steady for the last couple months. We kind of knew what was dropping off from then on. So overall, a potential revenue shortfall of about $1.1 million. On our expenditures, we're still identifying savings. We have identified some, set it aside for savings due to the school closure and other areas. I mentioned before, and we still are monitoring health insurance for potential savings. We saw a pretty big dip in our health insurance there for a couple months, and then some of our payments in June have kind of spiked back up, and we were kind of expecting that spike. It was probably a little bit earlier than I thought. Really, even if we were for some reason to go over budget in our health insurance, I'm not concerned because of the savings in the fund balance in our health insurance fund. But if we had considerable savings in our health insurance this year, I would have looked at transferring that back out to help cover our loss in revenue. So we'll be finalizing our expenditures in July and probably into August, as I've shown on the screen. Overall, currently projecting expenditures to be under budget in the range of $2.5 to $3.5 million. Some of that contingent upon our health insurance savings and our other expenses that we're seeing here at the end of the year as we're trying to ramp up, and some of the COVID expenditures that you even saw in Dr. Kisner's presentation, not much of them already, but some of them, like our hand sanitizers and our soaps and our stations, we're trying to really stock up on that in case there's any supply issues as we move into next year, and because some of them are already on back order for several months, so if we do wait, we would not have them here before school started. So we have seen spikes there that we've had to redirect some of our expenditure savings to get those expenditures rolling. So this is just an overall summary. You'll see the total projected revenue shortfall of $1.1 million, but our expenditures savings have us still with a surplus in the year, ending the year somewhere in the range of $1.5 to $2.5 million, depending on how our revenues shake up with the state. Sales tax, obviously, is what I've already mentioned, and then the expenditures that we will have to incur at the end of the year. Any questions?
So just remind us, did the supervisors say that we could use some of these projected surplus to roll into next year? And have we already got that in the budget, or will that help us with the with our projected expenses, additional expenses, like the busing and the extra?
Yes, ma'am. Great question. So in our FY21 budget, we already built in a carryover of $1 million from FY20, And we did that before we were expecting a large drop off in our mainly lottery. We knew sales tax was potentially could be an issue, but it was after that we learned that lottery could be an issue. Lottery does not expect to be an issue now. So $1 million of our savings will roll into our 21 budget, and that was already budgeted mainly for, it's got to be used for one-time expenditures, and so that was for our expanded remediation and summer learning that the CARES Act fund did not cover. But the other expenditures that we are projecting that Dr. Kisner presented in the work session, and those were annual costs, as Dr. Kisner mentioned, that could be a situation where if we have savings over the $1 million in FY20, we could request the Board of Supervisors to roll that into our FY21 budget to help cover the additional expenditures due to the adjusted school schedule.
The counselors that we have to pay for the middle school, could that come out of these 2020 budget, or is that a 2021?
It will be a 2021 expenditure.
Any other questions? No, hearing none. All right, thank you, Mr. Fulmer. Appreciate all that you're doing for keeping your eye on the finances. All right. Hearing none, then we will move on to, right now, we still do not have our citizen comment opportunity. I would like everyone to know we are trying to come up with, especially as we move into a phase 3, of how we can begin to move into having potentially citizen comment in a safe way. Of course, there are a lot of pieces to look at for that. So I just want everyone to know we are looking at that. We are in contact also with other schools. How are people doing that, and how can we best do that? So there are thoughts on that, please let me know. But like I said, we are looking at our buildings and how we can do it as soon as we can do it safely for all those involved. All right, moving on, we had a board committee report. So I'm going to turn that over for finance and budget, which I believe was referenced that there was a meeting, I believe, Monday night.
Yesterday, that's correct. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Awesome. I may mention some things that Chris already mentioned, but if things have changed from yesterday to today in this COVID world, please correct me. But the FAB did meet yesterday, and we did receive an update on the teachers' turnovers and the contract that was on the agenda. And so the committee had a lot of questions, and Patrick did follow up with a report this afternoon that I asked Missy to share with the full board. And I was also considering that if it's the will of the board, and this is something that Dr. Chase mentioned to me, that we actually put it on the website because there's very good information there. If there's nothing that that shouldn't be in that report, perhaps we take that out. But I think for transparency, and I think our community would love to get some of the information. And perhaps there's a math teacher out there that is looking for an opportunity. We will be happy to have him or her. So we were also presented the preliminary budget and the development calendar for FY21. So the upcoming FAB will have to finalize that. We were also presented with the current CIP from the Board of Supervisors, and the board, our board, needs to get our recommendations ready to send over by August. And we also discussed the FY21, the adjusted school costs related to COVID. We also talked about additional transportation, cleaning, and safety costs. It currently looks like we're going to be in the hole, in regardless if Dr. Kisner put, I'm not sure if this amount is still correct, but $3 million contingency funds. But we definitely need to pay attention in case the state cuts our funding. And then last but not least, the supervisors, they approved the use of $1.1 million out of the $13 million of their CARES funding for purchase of 9,000 additional Chromebooks for us and for our kiddos. This should help with the remote instruction, but the caveat is that the Board of Supervisors did note it that if we receive money, COVID money, that we would have to purchase back that technology, so we will get to give that money back. And I know that our school system is in need of funding, so it's it's going to be like a catch-22. We get money in one hand, and then we have to give it from the other. So there's something to think about. So I'm hoping that the Board of Supervisors reconsider and maybe help us out a little bit here, especially looking at how much more cost that we may incur. Thank you.
Okay, next we will go to, actually, Dr. I can't move. Dr. Kisner, we'll give you your comments, but then you may get another crack after we do
I'm going
consent.
to do the community a favor. I'm not going to have any comment.
All right, well, listen to us tonight. So next on the agenda is our consent items. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Been moved in, very good, moved and seconded. Any discussion or request to remove any items? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Dr. Kisner?
Yes, thank you. I'll be
Do you have an announcement?
Yes, thank you. We made 2 appointments that I would like to bring to everybody's attention. I would like to welcome Susan Widerhold, who will assume the principal at Hampton Oaks Elementary School. Susan is currently an assistant principal at Dixon Smith Middle School. He has many years of teaching experience at the middle and elementary level. He has a very impressive resume, and I had an opportunity to talk to her, and we have a very good person at that school. I'm pretty excited. And I don't know if you had a chance, I know I sent it to you late last night. Christopher Zook has received a position as supervisor of school security and emergency management. And again, he has a very strong resume of private security, and he's also was a state trooper and a police officer. But again, I won't read his resume to you, but you have his resume, and I think he'll be a great asset to our school system. Thank you.
All right. Our virtual clapping, sort of in line with what we had discussed, I believe, in the last few weeks. We want to welcome both of those appointed, especially Mr. Zook, in regard to several of the issues we've been talking about with security and interface with SROs. So we can't wait to welcome him on board. It sounds like there was a lot of community outreach that was discussed, that he would be another member of that particular team. All right, moving on to action items. First action item 9.01 regarding ESSA and Title I, and more. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, it's been a motion approved and seconded. Are there any questions about the approval of the application?
Yeah, I just had
Yes,
one.
Dr. Chase.
So it says 2020, 2021 recommended Title I schools, and then it says 2019, 2020 recommended non-Title I schools. Are we talking about 2 different academic years, or is that a typo?
That's a typo.
Okay, thank you. If we can just fix it, I appreciate that. Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our next agenda item regarding a purchase of Chromebooks. Is there a motion? Move to approve?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded regarding the purchase of up to 9,000 Chromebooks. Are there any questions or comments? Dr.
I just wanted to confirm that we're going to have enough Chromebooks for every student with this purchase.
And now we would be, yeah, the answer is yes. I was turning to Jay, but did he walk away?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we will now have our 30,000 for 30,000 children.
And is the plan to distribute them as soon as they get back to school?
We'll plan to distribute them during the early weeks of their here. I'm not sure it'll be all the first few days, but we have to obviously receive many, and we have to disinfect. Many of the ones that we'll be distributing are sitting in our building.
And my question was just, will we be able to get them by the beginning of the school year? I know just about every division is
And plus, the
purchasing.
distribution will be much easier because most of the kids will be in school.
Hi, Hi, my question, Pam here, is in reference to support, not a help desk, but just some kind of support for individuals that parents can't help them set up their computer or whatever the case might be. How are we planning on doing that? I mean, having a computer is one thing, but being able to work it, do we have some kind of training we talked about this before. I just want to know for the public, you know.
Yeah, so, okay, so,
if you'd like to, yeah, so we have a plan where we're going to include high school students and professional technicians and potential CTE credit for the high school students. We have a plan in progress on that.
Okay.
Yes, Ms. Hollaback.
I just wanted to take a moment. I know we thanked them the last time, but I want to do it again. I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for appropriating these funds for us to do this, especially in the time that we have in Meg Bomke specifically for kind of picking up the ball and running with it. So just want to thank them again.
All right. Any other comments? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Cook, go out and Mr. Fulmer, go out and purchase order. Beat those other divisions to the to those Chromebooks. All right. Next is approval of the proposed revisions to policy 2401 and cellular phone and acceptable use devices. You all saw the attachment as well. Is
Move
there
to approve? Second.
Been moved and seconded. Are there any questions about this particular policy, the revisions? I think we talked this through pretty well last time. All right. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to 9.04, proposed revisions to policy 2107, 2406, 2409, and 2412.
Motion to approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any comment? This one did have some some additional language, as I recall. Hoping everybody has had a chance to review that. If so, all right. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our proposed revisions to policy 2106 and 2403.
Move to approve. Second.
Been moved and seconded regarding these two policies. Are there any questions, lingering questions or concerns, comments on this?
I just have a quick question about when do these go into effect? July 1st or
Yes.
immediately?
July 1st.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to 9.06, adoption of the proposed new policy 4113, standards of professional conduct for all employees. Is there a motion?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Yes. So I received an email and I read the proposal and the policy actually, and did not see anything in reference to some vague writing that teachers are not allowed to support students that attend Black Lives Matter rallies, such as the one at Stafford Courthouse, and that they were going to be fired. So I just want to make sure, because there's a lot of rumors going on out there, just to get traction on this. So I just want to make sure that we explain to the audience that that is not the case. Ms. Randall?
Patrick?
Hi there, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Glad to not have audio problems for once. Ms. Young, thank you for raising that. I do think it's important that we clarify that point. Employees do enjoy First Amendment rights at the workplace and in their private lives, and their right to speak on issues of public concern does exist. The only circumstance in which public speech on a matter of public concern by a public employee can result in any sort of employment action is where that speech has has a significant negative impact that gets in the way of the employer being able to effectively carry out its services. So it has to have a significant negative impact on the workplace for there to be any sort of implication there. So certainly the example you gave, that's an issue of public concern, and so that's a place where employees would have the right to go out and exercise the rights in that area.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Ms. Randall.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. I know we've received a lot of emails regarding this, and I would like to just kind of walk through again. I have in previous meetings, but I will do it again. In February, the governance committee brought this forward, and since Prince William is close proximity to us and we're often compared with, we went ahead and brought the Prince William policy to the governance committee with Dr. Kisner and Lisa Boatwright. And after going through it, there were some things that we had questions about, things that we wanted to make sure it included. And we were able to get assistance with that through an outside attorney. We also worked within our own staff, HR, technology, and others, to make sure that we were being respectful and responsible for a policy that we've been trying to put forth, from what I understand, for more than a year. So we really wanted to make sure that we invested our time and efforts into this. Patrick was a huge help. I know that at one point we started to receive quite a few emails of concern, and Patrick took some time to take those concerns and have responses to them that did not require language change in our policy. And we appreciate your extra time and efforts to help with those. And I know I've shared those with the board, and I know board members have also shared those with constituents that have reached out to them in just these past 2 days from a concern that was sent out to reach out to us. I would also like to say, Ms. Hollerback did ask at our last meeting if we had reached out to the SEA. I will say I was asked if I could be called back in May, and I said absolutely. I wasn't called. I did at that night reach out again. I didn't get a response for a few days, and then I was told you're in an email loop with Patrick. And so I saw that there had been interest on their part too to get some sort of a policy, and I know they had sat down with Dr. Kisner in September. So I feel like this is a policy that we have vetted through and haven't recreated the wheel so much. If you look at the Prince William policy and our policy, kind of a nerdy fact here, but theirs is 1,559 words and ours is 1,823. There's a nerdy fact. So we've, like I said, kept ourselves close. We did have to consider their policy has been in place for 2 years, and we have COVID that happened, so we did have to make some language parts that would definitely recognize the fact that, Dr. Kisner and his staff are considering remote options and making sure that we provide safety for our staff, but also in consideration of our students. So those are the things that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out and addressed for the level of work that our governance committee, and huge kudos to our staff for the level of work that they have done, brought back to us. We've questioned, something else came up. I learned a lot, and I appreciate their efforts. So thank you.
Ms. Hollerback.
I have a quick question, and this is probably something that either Dr. Kisner or Patrick can answer. Did we change the language that addresses teachers receiving or making phone calls in the classroom to accommodate for family emergencies and that type of thing?
Patrick?
I had drafted a potential change to that language, but I don't believe that it was incorporated expressly into what's before you tonight.
Okay.
I will say that I think Ms. Young's question and Patrick's earlier answer, and I do like that you guys are distributing to people, does show that whatever action you take tonight, and I'm just going to make the assumption for a second that it's going to pass, that we have outreach to do with our staff so they understand. I think that we're all getting the same emails, and there's obviously different interpretations of what this policy means. There's some concerns out there, and I think we owe it to our staff. I think we all agree on this, that they have an opportunity to get clarity on the policy. So I talked to Patrick earlier today. Our work will start after you take action today in giving people the opportunity to ask the questions and for us to answer it. And Ms. Hollaback's comment is a good one, because part of the email, one of the emails that you received, the person shared a personal concern about if I have to make a doctor's appointment during the day. I think it is addressed in the policy, but I think it'd be good if we could articulate to that. We're not suggesting by any means, you're not suggesting by any means that if your child is ill, you're ill, and you have to make an appointment.
Or elderly parents that we have to care for.
Yeah, so, but I think, again, you know how it is. When there's high emotions on things, people read things differently. So it's our staff. I know we all respect them and value them.
Definitely.
And so I do want to spend the next, and I say, Patrick, I love the idea. I'm delegating it to you, but I will be there also to participate. But do you feel like it should be in there?
Yeah, and I was under the impression that it was going to be. Was it an oversight, or, I mean?
Well, what I did was
and before you finish, I had a very public disagreement with another board member about such a thing, and I'm not changing my mind about it. So I would like to see it in there, and if there's a way to do it, I would like to see it in there.
Yeah, so, and maybe that was a part that I didn't, just so you know, I just sent it just to Holly and Irene, and I believe I sent it to both of you too. But you obviously got it, so I did ask Patrick to write something. I don't know if you have it by you, Patrick, that you could read what you wrote. I think it's just 2 sentences. If the board want to amend the policy, if it's not going to be too disruptive, but I think it does give clarity to it resolves that issue very quickly.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah, okay.
Can you read it, Patrick?
Working on that. Hang on just one second.
Sure.
Patrick, while you're looking for that, can I go around and get some other board member comments, and then we'll swing back? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Healy. All right. Anyone else? Dr. Warner, sorry.
I just want to say I appreciate everybody's emails, and I appreciate the fact that there is concern whenever we implement new policy, but codes of conduct are pretty standard. We have them for our students. I've worked in corporations, I've worked in hospitals, I've worked in universities. I've always had to sign a code of conduct. I think it's just a way of making the rules unambiguous, but we certainly recognize that you are people, and we have some of the best staff in Stafford County. I appreciate all the work that they do. I appreciate the efforts that they go beyond the normal workday to reach out to their students. And I appreciate all the effort that our central office staff has gone into with the governance board in developing this. I support the policy just because I think it makes sense to have these rules in one central place so everybody knows what they are. We're a large school district. We have 2,500 employees. It just makes sense.
Dr. Chase, for you next.
Yeah, so I also plan to support it, and once I hear the additional language, hopefully I will continue to feel like I want to support it. I did want to mention, I got some emails where people expressed concern about school board members going after teachers and doing this on Facebook or whatever. I kind of stay off Facebook, but I do want to clarify something. The school board, as Ms. Healy often reminds us, has two employees. They are Dr. Kisner and our clerk, Missy. So we cannot go after employees because they don't work for us. That's Dr. Kisner's lane, that's not our lane. So I just want to clarify that. And then I did want to ask, are we planning to review this after, say, about a year or something like that?
I would love to review it after a year with Patrick and see if there is something that comes up that maybe we need to revisit our language, addition, deletion, that may surface maybe after 1 year.
Don't forget, I'm here. I'm right here.
Would that be okay, Patrick?
Am I next?
So perhaps
yes, and I think, and at risk of interrupting Ms. Young, I will say that to Ms. Randall's last point, I think that there would be a strong interest from not only SEA as the employee organization, but I think from other staff members as well in participating in that dialogue. While we did have a number of administrators that had a chance to take a look at the proposed draft, I think that the perspective that we've received in the communications from staff over the last week and especially the last few days has been helpful. It's one of those things where understanding how things appear to the people who will be subject to the rules can often be helpful. So I do think that type of engagement would be very valuable in the evaluation period.
Right. And can I just finish my one other point I wanted to make, which is Ms. Randall made comments about how I'm a board member who had shared information with the public, and that information is on board docs. It's attached to this agenda item. And so if people are interested in seeing what HR's responses were to Stafford Education Association questions, they can go to board docs, go to this agenda item, and pull it up themselves, take a look at it.
Ms. Moore, you next.
Oh, thank you. Yes, so I'm looking at this from a different lens, right? So the police department, we have some bad apples in there, some bad hombres, right? And so they say that the police department is all great, everything is hunky-dory. Well, like some of my colleagues stated, I have a code of conduct for my job, and I sign it every year. I take training every year, and I know some of us, have other jobs that we have to do the same thing. So with that said, I don't believe that we had one in place. Therefore, I'm looking at the protection not only of other teachers, but also of our students. And so the students have code of conduct. That means that the teachers need to have a code of conduct also, administrators, everybody. If you're not doing anything wrong, then you have nothing to worry about. But what we are trying to do is weed out those that are going to harm our children or speak to them in disrespectful way or, have implicit bias or anything to that nature, because they come to me. These are the individuals that only call me. I may not get an email because they're fearful. So I want to protect the teachers that are willing to speak up if they feel uncomfortable, something is wrong, but I also want to protect our students that the teachers are behaving and speaking to them, in a good manner. And so for that reason, I am going to support this policy. Now, in addition, I know that if there are changes, Dr. Kisner, if when you have your community meeting with the teachers that you find that something needs to be amended to this policy, just please don't wait a whole year to bring it back to us.
Okay. Do you want to ask Patrick if he has that, or did you want to make one?
I think Ms. Healy had.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, he wanted to hear the suggestion first. Yes, Patrick, Mr. Burnett, are you available to share with us the language?
I am, and I just emailed it to Missy and Dr. Kisner as well, so that if it's helpful for Missy to share that with the board so you can see it rather than relying on my reading. I know that I like to view things myself for reading, but to incorporate the feedback around being able to receive brief phone calls from healthcare providers or related to your own health needs or those of dependents or other family members. What I drafted was a revision to Article 2 of the proposed standards of professional conduct. The content that was previously in there was still in there. I just split it into two paragraphs, one about use division resources for legitimate school business, but then to say nothing prohibits employees from reasonable and occasional use of school division resources and working time for personal purposes, and then offered 3 examples: the Wi-Fi example that was already in there, the personal email account example that was already in there, and then added a 3rd example that was related to brief phone calls that can't be scheduled during off times and where the contact is brief enough where use of leave isn't appropriate.
Missy, can you did email it? Just did.
All right, I'd like to give everybody a moment or two to check that. Normally I wouldn't do that, but I too am a reader, so that would be most helpful.
Did you put it on the screen? Yeah, you put it on the screen.
No.
Ms. Healy, you're on mute to those of us who aren't in the room.
Okay.
I have the
start
language
over?
if you want me to read it.
All right. I don't think it was ever the intent that a personal phone call to schedule a medical visit or to make arrangements that could not be done outside of the school workday would be prohibitive. And I appreciate you adding that, Patrick. And I think we are going to have some common sense applied in here. I suggest that we consider having the superintendent designate a contact person should questions arise or someone want an interpretation or have, just want a clarification. Because I do not want to cause any more angst in our staff than we already have caused by the COVID, the start of the school year, and everything else that's going on. I do think that this is not something that is intended to harm. It's intended to be a benefit and to add to the security for not just the students but the staff as well. So I'm going to be supporting this, and I would ask that evaluation come perhaps a little earlier than a year, so this time next year we can be looking at it if we need to make any amendments, that we can consider them before the next school year starts. And I know Ms. Hollerbeck has been looking at this topic for years, isn't it? I mean, it hasn't been years since it came to the governance committee, but I appreciate the work of the governance committee because this is a tough task. And you took it on and you came up with something that I think should work, and it should be for all of our benefit. And I just wanted to say that I'm not sure what bad apples are bad hombres, and that's men in Spanish. In the police department she was referring to, perhaps generalized, but I want to say a word in favor of our sheriff's office, who has done a marvelous job of trying to work with the school system. Now, do we have some enhancements we can make? Sure, for anything. But we have had nothing but cooperation and assistance from the Stafford County Sheriff's Office for years. And I'm thinking of going back to the sniper, and that was many, many years ago. But that presence in our schools has been to many students, perhaps not all, and maybe we need to make an effort to expand it to all students, but it has been comforting to have, a law enforcement officer in the schools. So I want to thank Sheriff Decatur and his staff for what they do to enhance, our schools and help us maintain security there.
I'd also like to thank Dr. Kisner because he did give us a lot of guidance and support on this policy and kind of guided us into, well, think about this, think about that, and put us into contact with the people that could really make sure that we took advantage of checking every box to make sure that we put a code of conduct together that was safe and for all of our staff. And like I said, at the same time, Lisa was putting together a code of conduct for our students. And in this day and age, when we're trying really hard to, as a board, make steps and corrections to improve cultural sensitivity, I think that, we just need to make sure we have the bumper guards there to kind of help everybody.
Yeah. Let me make a comment before my phone dies. Let me piggyback off of what Ms. Healy just said. Ms. Healy, the comments that I made, really, you know exactly where they came from. They have nothing to do with the Sheriff's Office in Stafford County, okay? And so it's a general statement in general for the United States of America. You know exactly where that came from. So do not put words in my mouth that I was talking about Stafford County. They are great men. I have great friends over there. And it was in respect to, in general, how we look at the police department. And we said there are some bad apples in there or bad hombres. Yes, I did say that. And they're men. But it was not referring to Stafford County. So let me correct you there.
Okay, if I could just say something. I appreciate people's comments, and I just want to make this comment. And I know we all think this way, but I don't know if I'll use an I statement, recognize the hard work of our staff. And I know, again, I have shared with you numerous times about the administrators. The teachers and the bus drivers and the custodians, and you could pick your group, are, I think what might have people been reacting to is, where are our accolades? Okay, where is our acknowledgement, like we're talking about the sheriff's department? And I'm there. I think we have a great relationship with Sheriff Decatur and his folks, and I have no interest in seeing that relationship be tainted by any means. So I just want to make sure that's very clear. But I think what I heard by reading those emails is I am putting in a lot of hours to make things work. And this policy then came out. And I think maybe what some people might have been suggesting is, I'm not really understanding why we have to have it. And so I think that's part of my homework, working with Patrick and others moving forward. I know your intent was not at all to send a message to people that you guys are bad, and because you're bad, we have to have a policy that's going to punish bad. And I'll just leave it at that. So all policies are only good if people understand it. If they don't understand, it's just written and shelved. So Patrick, and I'll depend on Lisa and others, will set up opportunities for staff to learn it, ask the questions, and I do agree with every comment, but I do want to follow up on Ms. Healy's comment, is to, and some of you already said this, bring you concerns that we think are legitimate, that need to be looked at earlier than later.
And if you set up something that with staff and your staff and teachers or whomever, as a board member, and I'm sure any of us would be happy to sit in and listen and learn from that situation as well.
Madam Chair, I just want a quick follow-up on that one. I've already said that I would like to see this added to the policy, but I think that it would also be important to take that document that Patrick developed to address some of folks' concerns and have that posted on the website so that people
is.
can see. It is on there?
It is, it's on
Okay,
our
we
board
just
docs
need to
right
make
with
sure
this.
that there's a link that people just have to click on it and
Yep.
it brings right to, so that I don't have to go searching for it.
Exactly.
I've tried finding documents on the
Board
website
docs.
a couple of times and I went down a rabbit hole, so.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
It's there.
If I could just draw the board's attention to our screen, you can see the proposed language is in the second bullet. If everyone would like to review that first. Is there, let's see, the motion maker was Ms. Randall, and I believe it was seconded by Ms. Hollerback. Is there a wish to modify the motion on the floor?
I'm fine with modifying the motion on the floor to include the amendment that Patrick made.
To have a new section 2 as described here. Is everyone clear? I always want to make sure we know what we're voting for. And does the seconder agree? All right, so the motion now on the floor will be to approve the new proposed policy 4113 with the amendment regarding section 2. All right, before we vote, I have not said anything so far. I would just like to make the comment that this task that was given to the governance committee came almost 2.5 years ago. And it was something that was looked at in general. I would just like to say this is not meant to target or call out employees. However, I think it is meant to set standards. In this day and age with technology, many of us have a wide range of familiarity with that, and I do have concerns in general about technology. My children are very familiar with it. They want to use it and may not know how to use it as well as some of us do, and where the lines are between. This does not want, I do not want to chill any communications with students. However, we do want to also make sure that our staff is protected as well, and our students. And this is just a set of guidelines, a code of conduct for what we hold dear in our school division. I believe that the majority, if not 99%, maybe almost 100% of our employees are following this. However, when there is something that happens, and this is not targeting any particular group, but if there is something that has happened, we do not want to, we want to be able to act and investigate quickly, because this does impact your colleagues, students, and all those in the building. We are looking at a variety of training about how for us to move forward as a school division, and I believe that's something we are trying to embrace. I believe this is just one more way to state and restate how much we value ourselves as professionals and the tremendous and daunting task that we all have to our children in this community. And I believe this is just one more statement for us saying we are concerned, we are professionals, and we love your kids, but there are guidelines that we want to operate within for everyone's protection. So for that reason, I will be supporting tonight's proposal and the amendment. Dr. Chase.
I just had a question for Dr. Kisner. Years ago, I have been a professor in a psychology department, and I am not a clinical psychologist. I'm an experimental psychologist. So I can't provide therapy. And if I were a clinical psychologist, I couldn't provide therapy to somebody who just wandered into my office. So when I started teaching early on, my department gave me guidance on if students came with problems, what I was supposed to do. And so with this code of conduct, I just, some of the emails that I got from teachers talking about how they interacted with our students, I just hope that staff is getting some guidance on what is their appropriate role in terms of interacting with students who may have really some serious issues.
And hopefully that will dovetail into some of what Dr. Hummer's been talking about, and just to keep that as part of that continual professional development and professional support. Sometimes when I hear the words, and Dr. Kisner knows professional development, that's a word for me, but I think some of the training that we need to be, and training may not even be the right word, is professional support. And so I just think that's something we as a board need to be open to, and Dr. Kisner to bring forward that type of support, as opposed, and not always development, if that makes sense. All right. With that, are there any more comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to our information items. Mr. Cook, is there any way that we would be able to put up the attachment on this one, or no? If not, that's okay. Since it's the calendar, I would ask for everyone to have that in front of them. And Dr. Kisner, I don't know if you have any comments on this
The
calendar?
only thing I would ask you is to move it to action. Okay.
Correct.
All right, so Tom, I'll just say one comment. Every year when we do a calendar, we'll always, and we should be concerned about 990 hours. Please recognize that is not, under COVID-19, that is not a concern. So, but I'll give Tom, if Dr. Nichols is on, just to give you a quick overview of what changes we've made. I think you understand why we need the 17th. But what are the changes? Tom, are you on?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Hazard, school board members, Dr. Kisner, just provide a quick overview. The changes in the calendar, again, are to facilitate the necessary professional learning that we're going to have moving into the school year. So we backed the school calendar start date up 1 week, which would provide our teachers 1 week of additional professional learning. Within that calendar, to try to maximize the total number of instructional days and hours, even though we will most likely have a waiver because of the COVID, all of the early release days have been removed out of the calendar, and those also were removed because with our transportation, in order to get kids home and buses back in a timely manner, due to the limited number of students that may be on a bus, there were concerns that the bus would not be able to get back to complete early release pickups and departures. So those were removed. We also looked at removing 2 teacher professional work days during the year, one being on the 2nd of November, and then the other one was the 25th of February, again to provide 2 additional instructional days back into the calendar. We also moved the end of the school year from the 26th of May to the 28th of May, which then moves the teacher work days to June 1 and 2. And with that, at this point, we do have about 177 total instructional days, but again, based on what schedule we end up using, of course, that will be less. But we made those challenges to try to increase the number of days that we have for instruction. And I'm here for your questions.
Ms. Randall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Nichols, will this emergency order, is it for the it will be for the entire school year, or if it gets lifted at some point, do we have to then change our calendar again?
No.
No?
On this one, on some areas, yes, but not on a calendar change.
Okay.
I mean, not on the 990 hours,
Okay.
because they know you can't go back.
Okay.
So once that waiver is given, it's given for the
Full calendar year.
calendar year.
Okay. And also, I've seen questions come up about, since we are one-to-one, what would be our role for snow days? And I'm looking at your A and B, where kids are coming into the schools, but are we then going to be exempt from snow days as well? And, or do the kids all have to go virtual, or how do snow days work?
I'll answer that. It's an interesting question because I've actually been asked a lot about snow days when it's been 90 degrees outside. So I would say right now, I don't see a change yet for snow days because, the the whatever, A or B schedule has kids on the bus. But I understand what you're saying is if we didn't have school, could those teachers now do remote? And I would just say we're not there yet. I think that's a conversation we could have. If it's an extended days out, I think we need to do something like that. So if we get a blizzard or where I think we'll become more realistic if we unfortunately see a very strong spike in this area, then we have to shut down for a while, that those will still be instructional days, but they'll be all remote days.
Ms. Healy.
Madam Chairman, I see that if we need to start cutting holidays, Martin Luther King Day is the first. Is that really the day we want to cut out this year? I mean, I would suggest that we not use that as an alternative. I mean, if we're really looking at days, there's days in the fall that may be more appropriate if we want to get ready, because it's first come, first used. So
yeah,
my suggestion would be that we not have that.
We're not going to use
as a whole.
Well,
but
this calendar was adopted before I think.
Well, I'm looking at page 2 of the calendar, procedures, makeup days. Could we put page 2 on there, please?
Ms. Healy, and those were suggestions, but we can remove that, and I mean, I don't think we're going to.
If we're going to, and I hope we don't need to use any of these days, but if we're going to need to use them, my suggestion is that we not include Martin Luther King as the first day we're going to take out.
We'll go to the bottom.
It's a second down.
We're already missing so much time. I can't imagine that.
No,
a day is going to make a difference.
Martin Luther King Day is a day that kids come back to school.
It's one of the attachments to the agenda.
You have the back.
Oh, it's not. Oh, it's on my agenda. Nobody else has it? I'm the only one that has the back.
Yeah,
it's a second attachment.
Yeah, it won't open.
You don't have it?
It won't open.
I have a magic computer, and I'm the one that's technologically challenged.
Ms. Healy, could I suggest that if we are going to move this to action, that you be the one to move it to action with that amendment?
Yes, and Mr. Nichols, do we need to substitute another day for that, or can we just delete that?
The wording suggests that we can add days to the end of the year, add time to the current schedule. So it covers that. Those were just suggested days that they've had in the calendars, but that can be changed, ma'am. Not a problem.
Okay. Well, if we can just delete January 18th.
I mean, if you guys feel comfortable, just take it off. But, I
that's what I would suggest. Since we're approving this, even though it's a may and it's not a shall, it's still a possibility.
Yeah. So
there it is. Thank you. So if this is to be moved to action, that's one thing I suggest we consider. But I do want to say I'm all in favor of not having any early outs. I've gotten so many complaints from staff, from bus drivers, from the cafeteria people, from parents, that it just seems that the early outs cause a lot of challenges for families as well as for staff, and we're running those buses, all day anyway. So I'm grateful for that, and I'd like us to evaluate that in consideration of other calendars.
Can I point out also that in that same paragraph, it says that May 27th and 28th would be makeup days, but we've already taken those away. So maybe we should just recommend that the whole procedure makeup days be removed.
Ma'am, you guys received the this is the wrong edited copy of this.
Okay.
So I do apologize looking at it closely here. We must have sent the wrong attachment, but the back, yes, on the corrected one that I have in front of me, if I can share it, does not have the 27th and 28th. The early release days section is removed.
Well, that answers that question. I mean, really, the only reason that we put that in there is to try to give families advanced planning notice. So if they want to plan a long weekend, they know that may be at risk if we have to have school back. But this year, I don't think anybody's going to be doing too much advanced planning because there's so many unknowns.
I'd like to see what we're approving. I'd like to actually see it. So can we?
Tom, did you send it to Missy?
Admin assistant sent it, but I can send the one right now to Missy right at this moment that I have in front of me.
You send it to Missy, or send it to the school board.
Okay.
Can we put it up there?
Yeah, send it to everybody. Send it to Jay so he can put it on the screen.
All right, so we just discard this one.
No.
Or, we're going to see what they're asking us to approve when it comes up.
Are there any other questions about days? I have one. I see on the calendar, of course, that it is a professional day. Sorry, my colors of blue and purple are sort of blurring together. For election day, and my only comment in that regard is going to be, will we be able to get the sufficient cleaning done since many of our schools are used?
That day, you're totally right. On a presidential election, nobody comes to work.
Okay.
Especially in COVID-19. I actually, well, I know schools have to be off for kids. That's the law. You know, again, I need to, I have not been here yet when you guys adopted a calendar. So this happened right before me. I'm not now, but I like to learn what the process you have used. I would just say other places, the school board would approve the first day, they approve the last day, and give it to the superintendent to make the other changes as necessary. You may not want to do that. I kind of feeling some of you probably don't want to do that. But you avoid this conversation, okay? You know, I think I know how to manage the calendar and understand the days. But for election day, when you adopted this, we probably never thought about COVID-19. We shouldn't have. If you did, you would be remarkable. But I don't think on a presidential thing, and the registrar's office, they don't want our cars there and our folks there anyway. So.
Because I think that maybe if we did put that as a student-teacher holiday, just because I would assume some of the parts of the building, since many of our schools are used as polling places, we will probably have cleaning folks there, possibly, let's see, polls close at 7. You know, I just,
Is Columbus Day left in because it's an end of a 9-week or a grading day? Is that why we're leaving it as a professional day?
To answer your question, Ms. Randall, and also one that was forwarded to me from Dr. Chase, is that when we look at our days, if we wanted to have consistent days, Columbus Day, we've traditionally had off as a holiday.
Right.
But that's something that you could consider. You could also consider the April 5th, and you could also consider, you know, January.
I think our teachers will need some break.
Okay, I don't disagree, but I'm just wondering is that what it correlates with?
Yeah, I wasn't, you know, it's easy for me to say it for at least one more year. I wasn't here when you guys, what was your thinking at these? It's we do have to have some professional time.
Yep.
You know, we're taking, people do need opportunity to regroup.
Yep.
The 12th is the day after the marking period.
Okay.
Okay, so maybe I'll go ahead and take a shot at making a motion. All right, so I move that we move this item to action.
That's a good motion. I'll second that, Dr. Jason. Good shot. It already was. Aye.
Aye. And then I would like to make a motion that we adopt the calendar that is currently on the screen with the amendment that the November 3rd day, election day, be a holiday for both students and teachers and staff.
Now second.
Do you want to do the Martin Luther King while you're at it?
It's already, he already took it out.
That's already
He took
done.
it out.
Very good.
All right. So it's been first moved and seconded with the noted change regarding Election Day. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I'm sure this would be the follow-on, Dr. Kisner, is as soon as we can start to publicize
Yeah,
this
no, my
calendar.
Friday letter, this will be obviously a big part of it.
And probably start to put it everywhere we can. All
And
right.
particularly the start date,
What's that?
particularly the start date, because most families are planning
Oh,
on
no, yeah, absolutely. Don't
the
do-
10th.
Before the week's over, everybody will know this.
Yeah.
And I would suggest
Perhaps you could just make that announcement for people listening, the start date for students.
yes, start date for students will now be August 17th, which is a Monday, and depending on which group you may be in.
Thank
right.
you for responding very quickly on this.
And Dr. Kisner, also maybe we can reach out to local media outlets, especially the Freelance Star or other ones, to be able to maybe even help us also broadcast this. All right, moving on to our next information item. However, there is a note as well regarding this item, is regarding the approval of the purchase of the VoIP telephone system. If you note, there is a request regarding this item as well. Are there any questions about this item?
I would just ask that, I mean, there's language for us to read, but perhaps Jay could just summarize why we need to move it, why you're requesting that we move it to action tonight.
Due to the closure, we were delayed in our RFP process. So we need the voice over IP to be ready for Berry Farm to open. And they did not prepare the new renovation to have old cabling for the old style system. So we need to put a voice over IP system in for Berry Farm to open.
All right. So, is there a motion?
I second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of moving this to action, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Is there a
Move
follow-up?
that we approve the purchase of voice over IP telephone system for Ferry Farm. And it's just
Second.
Ferry Farm, or is it other, for just that we approve item 10.02. Right.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Any further questions for Mr. Cook? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries
Thank you
unanimously.
very much. This is going to be huge for us.
Go forth and
Yes. You got a lot of money tonight.
Go
too,
forth and
okay?
purchase.
Yeah, that's true.
next item for information is about the voting delegate and alternate for the Virginia School Board Association. That can be talked about among all of us, because as you all probably saw by email, it will be virtual, I believe, this year.
For alternate or, I thought you were
I second
volunteering.
that.
You can delegate to Pam. She's not here.
The next,
She put her hand up.
that's right. The next item is the approval of the renewal of the contract with Blackboard to provide the website management and mass notification system. That is from budgeted FY21 funds. Is that correct, Mr. Fulmer? FY21 funds. So it is fine for that to be approved at a future meeting in FY21. All right.
Madam Chairman, for some of these, given the difficulty we have conducting business, I would imagine it's same, if not worse, for contracting. With these being renewals and optional years, is a recommendation from staff, the money's been appropriated. I would suggest we make an exception and, move these to action this evening, because there's no point in waiting. Now, I know we set up a meeting on July 14th, but that's for a specific purpose. And so we could be a month from now before we get this approved. And if we can approve it this evening, and then it could be in place, no, gaps. And these are the kind of things that we're going to need with the challenges coming up with the school year.
I would suggest, board members, let's look at 10.04, 5, and 6. They all seem to be in that same vein.
Yeah.
If they're,
I make a motion that we move 10.04, 10.05, 10.06 to action.
Second.
all right, any discussion?
I think that it's really, in speaking with what Dr. Chase was talking about earlier, with this dream box and maybe the potential for teachers to want to play with something over the summer, I'd like to make sure that we have all subscriptions ready to go, no delay. I think that's good.
I agree. Thank you all. All right, all those in favor of moving these 3 items to action, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
Can you scroll it down for the public?
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
I move that we, item 10.04, that we approve the action item 10.04 for the contract for Blackboard.
Will be 9.08.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Move to approve action item 9.09. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
okay.
That's how I know.
The approval of the renewal of the subscription for the Dreambox Mathematics Blended Learning application.
Second. Been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. One more.
Move to approve action item 9.10, approval of the purchase of Star Reading Assessment.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Fulmer, is there any issue for you to be able to purchase these items, or is that going to throw you off? I know we've already done it, but
No, they'll be fine. It'll allow us to hit the ground running come July 1 once our new money resets.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gill.
Yes. All right, well, our final information item, which now I believe will be 10.04, is discussion about requiring the parental or guardian notification. Ms. Hellerback, do you want to start?
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Healy, for seconding this, get this on the agenda. Apparently, this has been brought up in the recent past and the very far away past for my time on the board. Apparently, our student code of conduct, as it is at the moment, basically when the parents and the kids sign off on their paperwork and they send it back in, they're essentially signing away their rights as well. Apparently, Ms. Healy had brought this up many years ago, and that was the answer that was given to her. Being concerned about parents having a say in what their students say to incriminate themselves has become a problem. And whether they're in custodial care or whatever the case is, me as a parent, I want to be able to understand what's going on before any of my children say anything that may get them deeper into trouble. I'm one of those parents that has always said, you know, if a principal asks you a question, you answer them truthfully. And that worked out great in elementary school, but things happen in high school that can put them in precarious situations. And without a parent present in front of a principal, or if the principal is questioning a student and the student feels compelled to answer in front of an SRO or another administrator as a witness, all of that can be used in a court of law, whether they're a minor or they're over 18 or 18 or over. So what I would like to do as we have these conversations with our SROs, looking at our MOU, and we're updating our student code of conduct, I'd like to see some language. And I'm not asking for any action tonight, or, I mean, I welcome discussion, of course, but I would like us, whether it's during the conversations, to update our MOU, or if it's a group of us get together and sit with Dr. Kisner and with Lisa to find some acceptable and workable language to put in there that gives us as parents some rights. It seems like a perfect time with the restorative justice conversation and the SRO conversation. This seemed to fit right in. So I would really like your support in addressing this. And Pam, if you're still there, would love to have your support. I know we talked about this on many occasions. So that's where I'm at, and I'll be sending an email to Lisa Boatwright. Sorry?
Can I ask a question? So when a child turns 18, does that automatically, are the parents no longer the custodial or adult in charge, or is the child that turns 18, are they suddenly totally responsible for signing everything for themselves? Like, what is the division policy on that?
Well, before I answer, I'm going to let Dr. Kisner respond from an administrative.
Well, I think at 18, unless they have cognitive limitations, that the 18-year-old does have full authority to make determinations of what they sign or not sign.
Can I add something from being in the university world? In the university world, what we're told is Congress has privacy laws, and we are not allowed to talk to parents about anything with a child over 18, an adult, not a child over 18, an adult. And so when they turn 18, so what I would say is, I'm absolutely in support of exploring this for parents and students, and I would just ask that whoever does the research necessary to figure out whether we can, because I very much fear that we cannot put language in for when somebody turns 18.
I respect your position, but I sort of disagree with you. I disagree with the concept that administrators have the right. Law enforcement, probably, absolutely. I'm going to probably put money on that they can. But if the student, whether they're 18 or not, an administrator doesn't have any type of constitutional given authority over that student other than to protect them.
The part that I was getting at was
the parent
notifying the parent that it's a violation of their privacy. If they don't want their parent notified, you are violating their privacy to call their parent.
Okay.
That's what I was referring
and maybe
to.
that's the difference. Maybe it's whether they want you to tell their parents
because in
or
college
not. So maybe
you
that's
have to be
maybe it's a
FERPA.
maybe it's a form in the code of conduct that said that the child signs and says, I give my parents permission to be notified upon any emergency, whether it's a law enforcement issue, or if it's a educational issue, whatever the case is. That's where I'm going.
I just want to make this comment. I know this is just information, but I do think this requires a lot of discussion. I'm a 16-year-old student. We have a thing. If you see it, say it, tell somebody. Someone has a knife in their pocket. Somebody's got crack cocaine. If we're suggesting that the principal can't question this kid, now I know it says requires notification. Maybe that's the wiggle room. It's not approval. but I don't want to put other children at risk. So I like to get the principals and other people involved in this. This has huge ramifications of safety to me. I understand what your concern is, the trial, but I'm thinking about that principal who has to investigate and now is limited to able to interview, because, again, I need to get great clarity of what it means to give parental or guardian notification. Okay, maybe the notification is through that book that you signed that we're going to interview your child.
Okay, so I don't want you to get caught up in the weeds on this, because that is so broad, and I understand your concern.
Yeah.
That's not what I put in the email. What I put in the email was in certain circumstances.
Okay.
And the circumstance that I'm talking about, which could have put another student in jail for a long time, was he was in custodial custody in a principal's office, or the assistant principal's office. The assistant principal questioned him in front of a sworn law enforcement officer who was there taking notes, while the student felt compelled, because the SRO was there, to say whatever it was to answer any of the questions that the
Right, and I understand. I'm just trying to balance the role of our responsibility, and I know you think the same way, responsibility of safety, and we have something, if you see it, say it, and then not limit our staff that are responsible to keep our schools safe. And so when I just read that sentence, it concerns me greatly. I didn't really read it first to say it included our staff. I thought it said law enforcement only. And then when I just read it now to see the word staff, I'm just thinking, how does a principal and others, keep their school safe if they cannot interview a student that has been brought to their attention of having something that could harm not only other children, but potentially themselves. So I just think it needs conversation and input. I do have, I do think, and that's why now maybe it didn't make sense when I suggested that the school resource SRO memorandum could maybe address the part with the law enforcement. When I read it first, I did not see the staff part in it.
Right.
Because I think the SRO memorandum might be able to address the issue about, the notification of
I would
parents
agree.
prior to the interview. But
I would agree.
I'm just being very honest with you that I know the role of the principal, and he or she often has to intervene because they've been aware of or been made aware of a potentially violation of the code of conduct that you adopted tonight.
Right, and I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah,
As I
yeah,
said, I don't
yeah.
have a problem with that. My problem is when they're doing it with a sworn law enforcement officer in the office.
Right, so I think
we need to work on that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, that's all I'm saying.
Ms. Healy was the second. I'm going to give her an opportunity to speak to.
There's certainly no intention to impede any efforts to restrict safety for students or staff or anything in the schools. That's not the intent. The intent here is to, I'll say, protect students' rights. And I agree with Dr. Chasen. I had a brief conversation with Ms. Hollerback. I think once a student turns 18, assuming that they are competent, that the parents' rights, are affected. As parents, we always want to be involved, but the law says that 18-year-old will be making their own decisions. But my concern is that there be some notification to the parents and an opportunity for the parent to be present or to have a designee present, because right now there is no obligation at all. And generally, at least to my recollection from what I've heard in the past, the parent is not notified until after the interview takes place, after the statement is written by the student, signed, and made a part of an official record. So this is not just, in my view, with a law enforcement officer present. It's to have a student, participate or be subjective, however you want to look at it, as to an interview for the purpose of determining whether there has been a violation of the code of conduct or of a law. So I think parents have the right to choose to be there or send somebody there, or to say, wait until I come to the school to do that questioning. Now, if there is a issue of violence, or if there's a weapon, of course, that's going to have to be, confiscated. And there, there are going to be certain times when I would assume that there would have to be a search. But in terms of getting that statement from the student, interviewing the student, I do have concerns when a student is in a room by themselves, or with a, with an administrator who is a person of authority, and is asked or told, to tell what happened.
And having had experience with this, where an administrator talked to a child and said, after they wrote their statement, that's not true, do you want to try again? And, that can be, depending on how the administrator is even behaving in that situation. Because maybe, they see something that they think a story happened in their mind, or the one child says it, and it's always the he said, she said, or he said thing that they have to kind of unpack, if you will. And so, yeah, I think having at least an option as a parent to be there, it's my option. It's a lucky thing I have.
I'm just going to say, because I've been doing this too long. Notification now saying parent present. When you're a principal at any level, but definitely the middle and high school level, and high school more, and you have disturbances, and you have threats, and you have bullying, and you have camera videos of things, to say we're going to now wait around till a parent shows up, okay, I would just ask us to really step back and allow those who are in that position to keep our schools safe for all children, okay? I have not seen any examples of, I don't see our principals have an interest of interviewing children when it's not necessary. I do have some concerns when the police is present, because I think it does take it to another level, and I also have concerns when police come in our buildings and interview children on a potential crime that didn't happen on school property, okay? That something happened on the weekends or in the evenings, and they choose to come to school to do that interview. And I've had talked to Sheriff Decatur on this, so so it's, but I just think, again, I want us to at least, think this out and get input from those people that we give a great responsibility for to keep our schools safe, to see what we're actually really saying is something that's going to contribute to the safety of children, or going to maybe compromise the safety of children.
I know it's getting late, but Madam Chair, may I respond? Dr. Kisner, I don't think you understand what we're saying. We're not saying that the administrator shouldn't take action. We're saying that there shouldn't be an interview, that there shouldn't be a statement written, that the parent should have the opportunity.
It's 9 o'clock in the morning. It's 9
there.
o'clock in the morning. I work in DC. I could get there at 4 o'clock. So what do we now have? We have a kid that has a potential very dangerous thing. We have a kid, and now we have to watch this kid for 5, 6, 7 hours. I just think we need to think it out, okay? Because it's not as simple as, oh, okay, thank you, I'll be right over. It just doesn't work that way. Or they might say, no, you cannot interview my child. And that child might have just done a very dangerous thing. And now we need to take statements, because it's going to maybe eventually get in front of you as a discipline review. And again, the interest of the individual, I understand. I'm having a hard time accepting it in this very brief conversation if it's going to put other children at harm. Okay.
And my point is, I don't see how it's going to put other children at harm.
I could see
well,
many ways.
we can have that discussion separately, but I would like this looked at from a parental standpoint. This is not to put someone at harm. This is to protect the rights of individual students, and exactly what you're talking about. It may come to discipline, it may do something else. And this is somewhat ironic to me, because we're trying to step back from discipline, from everything that, we're moving forward, the restorative justice. We're trying not to have, the extent of discipline, and we're looking at how we can minimalize it, in my view. But there is always going to be some, and I just don't think that it's fair to parents to have a student interviewed and write a statement and possibly be held in a room for 1-2 hours or approached after the statement's written, said, well, I don't think that's really true. You know, you need to write it another way. That there's rights here. So I think we'll have to agree to disagree on this for now, but we're asking that this be looked at. And I can't imagine that there should be an issue at looking at this. And if it's, in my view, this is not a matter of safety, that administrators are responsible for safety in the schools. This is not saying that they can't, do the search for if there's a weapon or something that's going to cause them harm. This is to say you're not going to sit that child down and have that child write a statement without an opportunity for the parent. This is a child under 18 to say, I want to be present. And if the child were under custody of a law enforcement officer, there would have to be rights given. But in schools, there are no rights. There's no Miranda rights in schools. Of course, I mean, in effect, you could say they're in custody if they're in the principal's office, because they don't have a choice of leaving or not. So anyway, I apologize. This is not my strength is not, criminal law, but I think that in some cases our students are treated as criminals, and perhaps that's not what I like to see done in our schools. I'll leave it at that. I apologize for the extra time.
Just, I agree with the context of what Ms. Hollerbeck is trying to say. Children in school are in especially high school, are in a different position. They're a little bit more vulnerable because they've been taught to respect the authority of the principal. Principals should always act if there's any risk of imminent danger. But I think the question comes in is, once they've interceded in that, should a student be questioned by them and law enforcement and then sign a statement without any counsel from their parent or from another designee? I think it puts them at greater risk. They may say something that incriminates them, and as an adult in the real in any other setting, they would have Miranda rights. They would have other rights. I just think we do have to discuss this. I think it's a very important thing to bring up. I've had parents say to me that they felt their children were treated unfairly, that they came into the principal's office or the AP's office and the SRO was there and it was intimidating, and they felt they had to tell, they had to answer the questions the way they, thought they wanted to.
Let me just make sure.
So I'm just saying it is something that we can look at, but it certainly is a complicated problem.
I have any concerns when the SRO is there. I just want to make that clear. I think it becomes another level. I'm just saying, last time I'll say it, high school principals and then middle school principals have to do a lot of investigating. Okay, it's not just 1 or 2 a day. It's more than that. And I'm talking APs and principals. And I'm separating the law enforcement out of this. As I read this, versus giving notification, I'm actually okay with the notification. Okay, Mr. Kisner, I have your daughter in my office. This is what our concern is. I just want you to know I'm going to talk to her about this. Okay, but I'm hearing it now go to another step, that parent has to be invited to be present, and I just want to learn how realistic that would be, and what.
But this day and age of presence can be, I've got your daughter in my office, I've got you on speaker, so you're present. Or, a Zoom, or, presence nowadays is like, either face-to-face or like what we're doing right now. It can be a number of different things.
It could also be that parent that you can't get in touch with because they're cleaning hotel rooms or they're on a construction site, and I have your kid 5-6 hours in there, and we have this real concern that needs to be addressed now, okay? And the concern is you just punch somebody in the face or you threaten somebody, and so I understand protecting that kid's right. You know me by now, but I'm also have a duty to protect all the other children, and so notifying versus being present. But I really want to hear from my principals, our principals, and people that do this, and maybe they'll say, Scott, Dr. Kizner, Scott, it's okay, we could do this. Then I step back. But my initial reaction to this is that, and I'm not talking about the law enforcement, I totally agree with that part, okay? I'm talking about our staff being limited to conduct an investigation because they're aware of, either by a teacher making a referral or a kid coming to them, and we have it all over the schools. If you see it, say something, and now to put potential restrictions to do their investigation.
Right. There's a thousand different scenarios that we could look at, and we're not accomplishing anything tonight other than keeping you up after you've been up all night long, and me as well, and probably some others.
And I was just going to say,
and
I was just going to say, it may be that we need a little education on what exactly, what are these investigations that principals, what does a principal's day look like in that respect? So just sounds like we just need more information. Yep. And think about it. That was going to be mine. This isn't something to solve tonight, but it's brought it out into the open for discussion.
Good discussion.
You never know who's listening. There, we may get some other input on this topic. I think just getting an overview of how things are, because I think there are some areas that we seem to have some agreement on. We will be discussing in the coming weeks various things. So just to have this as we begin to understand it, so that it won't be left alone. So what I'm going to say to my board members, our upcoming board meeting, our regular meeting is July 21st. However, we have added our July 14th meeting at 6 o'clock, mostly focused at this time on COVID response. Possibly, as you all know, the summer is a time for hiring, so there may be a need, giving Dr. Kizner and Mr. Burnett the option to put on, if there are personnel actions that need to occur, we could certainly do that special called meeting in case there are appointments that need to be made that evening and get everybody rolling. So as you can see, we do have a closed session after this. I don't know, Ms. Hollerback, can you read us into closed session?
I move to convene in closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A3 of the Code of Virginia to discuss and or consider the acquisition of real property for the public purpose of building high school number 6.
Can I ask that we take